ask you something. When was the last time you really chose yourself? Not in a small way. I mean, when you stopped chasing their attention, stopped explaining yourself to people who didn't care, and finally said, I matter to me. We're so conditioned to win others over, to be liked, to be chosen. But what if the most powerful thing you ever do is choose yourself first? Today, we're going to talk about what that looks like. Not the fluffy self-love quotes I'm talking about, real grounded, uncomfortable, transformative self-love. The kind that changes your life from the inside out. You've probably heard people say you have to love yourself first. But let's be real, what does that actually mean? Most people confuse self-love with being selfish, arrogant, or self-centered. They think it means cutting people off without reason, or doing whatever you want without consequences. But loving yourself is none of that. It's not about ego, about survival. It's about thriving. It's about building a foundation within yourself. So strong that no storm, no person, and no failure can shake it. Self-love is not selfish. It's foundational. And until you understand this, you'll keep pouring energy into everyone else while slowly draining your own battery. Think of it this way. If your phone battery is at 2%, can you spend all day texting, taking calls and running apps? No, it shuts down, it stops functioning, you recharge it without guilt. But when it comes to yourself, you keep going, even when your mental, emotional, and spiritual battery is completely depleted. You show up for others. You say yes when you want to scream. No, you fake smiles. You keep peace while you're falling apart. Inside, that's not noble. That's not strength. That's self-abandonment. And it always comes at a cost. The truth is, no one can give from an empty cup. You can't show up fully in your relationships, your job, your goals, or your purpose. If you're constantly putting yourself last, eventually you hit a wall. You snap, you burn out, and then what? You blame life, or other people, or bad luck. But the truth is, you forgot to prioritize yourself. You forgot that you matter too. Self-love starts with the decision to stop running on fumes. It's recognizing that you deserve rest, nourishment, kindness, boundaries, and support, not just from others, but from yourself. It's choosing to say, I matter, I count. I'm allowed to put myself first without guilt. Because here's something no one teaches us when you don't take care of yourself. You unintentionally teach others that it's okay to not take care of you either. Think about how many times you've tolerated disrespect, overworked, stayed quiet to keep the peace, or stayed in situations that slowly chipped away at your self-esteem. Not because you didn't know what was wrong, but because deep down you were afraid that choosing yourself would make you look selfish or ungrateful. But choosing yourself is not selfish. It's sacred, and the longer you ignore that truth, the more disconnected you become from your own power. Loving yourself is not just a mindset, it's a series of daily decisions. It's choosing to get out of bed even when you don't feel like it. It's eating food that fuels your body instead of numbing your emotions. It's saying no to people who drain you, even if they get upset. It's walking away from anything that doesn't honor your peace. And most of all, it's speak to yourself with the same compassion you give to the people you love, because the way you talk to yourself in your head matters more than you realize. If you constantly criticize yourself, second-guess yourself, or punish yourself for past mistakes, you create an internal environment that is toxic. One where love can't grow. You can't hate yourself into a better version of you. Growth doesn't come from shame. It comes from compassion. The same way you'd help a friend heal through something, you have to learn how to be that kind of friend to yourself. And when you do, everything changes. When you love yourself, your standards rise. You stop settling for crumbs of attention. You stop begging people to choose you. You realize that the person you've been waiting for, the one who truly sees you, respects you, and stands up for you. Self-love doesn't mean you always feel confident. Happy, it means you're committed to showing up for yourself even on the days you feel like a mess. It means you forgive yourself over and over again. It means you stop chasing perfection and start honoring progress. And it means that you refuse to betray yourself just to keep people comfortable at the end of the day. Loving yourself is the most unshakable power you can ever develop, because people will come and go, circumstances will change the world, will test you. But when you've built a strong, steady relationship with yourself, when you know your worth, respect your boundaries, and speak your truth, you become unbreakable. You become the safe space you've always needed. You become whole, not because someone completed you, but because you completed yourself. And that is the foundation upon which every other part of your life is built. Not selfish, just necessary, not optional, essential, because everything gets better when you learn to love yourself. Truly, fully, and without apology. The way you treat yourself becomes the instruction manual for how others treat you. Every thought you think about yourself, every word you say under your breath when you make a mistake. Every time you ignore your own needs to please someone else, you are setting the tone for your life. And the truth is, most people are more kind to strangers than they are to themselves. They're more forgiving of someone else's flaws than their own. But what you don't realize is that your internal dialogue doesn't stay inside it. Leaks out, it shapes the energy you bring into every room. It shows in your body language, in your posture, in the way your eyes shift when you speak about yourself. It shows in how you accept less, how you let things slide, how you second your worth again and again. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation for every other relationship. If you constantly criticize yourself, you'll start expecting criticism from others. If you don't trust yourself, you'll start suspecting that no one else can be trusted either. If you don't think you're worthy of love, then love will always feel foreign. Even when someone is giving it to you, you'll question it, sabotage it, push it away, not because the other person is wrong, but because it doesn't match your belief. About yourself, people can say all the right things and do all the right things. But if you believe deep down that you're not lovable, not enough, not deserving, you won't be able to receive it. That's why the work begins with you. It's not about arrogance. It's not about walking into a room thinking you're better than anyone else. It's about walking into a room and not thinking you're less than anyone. That's the difference when you build a strong, healthy, respectful relationship with yourself. You stop performing for love. You stop auditioning for worth. You stop bending over backwards just to be tolerated when you deserve to be celebrated. You stop seeking approval from people who haven't even earned a place in your life because you're no longer waiting for someone else to tell you you're enough. You already know it, and let me be real. It takes practice. It takes awareness. You have to pay attention to how you speak to yourself. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you fail, when you feel rejected, do you kick yourself when you're down? Do you replay your mistakes like a broken record? Or do you show yourself grace? Do you remind yourself that you're a work in progress, just like everyone else, that you're allowed to fall and get back up? The most successful, grounded, magnetic people you know didn't get that way by luck. They built that energy. They created a relationship with themselves so strong that no one else's opinion could shake them. They stopped being at war with themselves. That's how they walk in peace. That's how they attract people who respect them, because they've already learned how to respect themselves. And if you're sitting here thinking, but I've never had anyone love me properly, then let this be the moment you start doing it for yourself. Let this be the moment you become the person you needed. When you begin loving yourself genuinely, intentionally, you'll notice things shift. Conversations feel different. You stop trying to convince people to stay. You stop shrinking. You stop chasing people who can't see your value, because you finally see it for yourself. People will always treat you based on the cues you give them. If you treat yourself like an afterthought, they will too. If you let people cross your boundaries, they'll assume there are no consequences. If you put everyone else on a pedestal and forget your own needs, they will too. But if you hold yourself with confidence and compassion, if you set the tone for how you expect you to be treated by how you treat yourself, something powerful happens. You don't have to demand respect. It becomes the only language people speak around you. So check in with yourself. What's your habits? Listen to yourself talk, because all of it is a signal. All of it is either reinforcing your worth or quietly tearing it down. You get to choose. You get to rewrite the story. You get to show up differently. And when you do, when you finally decide to treat yourself like someone worth loving, the world will follow your lead, because they'll believe what you believe. They'll mirror what you reflect. And if you want love, kindness, respect to be what you receive, then let it begin with what you give to you. If you want to truly understand why loving yourself more than anyone else is non-negotiable, start here. People can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. That's not just a nice quote to write on your mirror. It's a powerful truth about human connection, about it. If you don't know who you are, if you're constantly pretending to be what others want, if you've spent years hiding your insecurities under fake smiles or achievements, how can you expect anyone else to really see you? They're not rejecting the real you. They're connecting with the version you've curated, the surface you've presented, and deep down that leaves you feeling misunderstood, disconnected, and alone. Even when you're surrounded by people, to meet yourself deeply means you sit with the silence. It means you look at your past without flinching. You examine your patterns, your triggers, your pain points, not to shame yourself, but to understand what made you who you are. So many people run from this work. They'd rather stay distracted, stay busy, stay pleasing others, just so they never have to face the truth of what they're carrying. But healing doesn't happen in noise. It happens in the quiet moments when you're brave enough to sit with your wounds and ask, did this come from? What belief am I still holding that tells me I'm not good enough? Why do I feel the need to earn love instead of just receive it? The truth is, most people are performing. They're performing in their friendships, their relationships, even in their careers. They're chasing approval. They're managing perceptions. But underneath it all, there's a fear. What if people saw the real me and left? What if they knew my insecurities, my doubts, my messy past? Would they still love me? And because they never risk showing their true selves, they never get to experience real love, just performance-based acceptance, which is fragile, temporary, and exhausting. You can't form deep connections when you're wearing a mask. Real intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires that you take that mask off and say, this is who I really am. But here's the catch: you won't be able to do that unless you've accepted that version of yourself first. You can't expect others to embrace what you still reject within yourself. That's why self-love is the foundation. It's not about ego, it's about security. When you know who you are and you've made peace with your past, your flaws, your failures, you stop needing to be validated by others. You stop asking, am I enough? Because deep down, you already know the answer. Beating yourself deeply also means you develop emotional maturity. You start to notice your own patterns before blaming others. You take responsibility for your choices. You learn the difference between self-protection and self-sabotage. You recognize that sometimes the chaos in your life isn't just happening to you, it's coming from you. That's not easy to admit, but it's necessary, because once you own it, you can change it. And that's when your relationships begin to transform. When you've met yourself deeply, you stop tolerating surface-level connections. You stop settling for conversations that go nowhere, for relationships that drain your soul. You no longer feel desperate to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. You're not interested in performing. You're interested in peace, in truth, in alignment. That kind of energy is rare, but it's magnetic. People feel it. The ones meant for you will lean in, and the ones not meant for you will drift away, and you'll stop trying to convince anyone to stay. The greatest relationship you will ever have is with yourself, and it determines every other connection you'll ever form. So if you've been feeling unseen, unheard, unappreciated, maybe it's not about them. Maybe it's a signal that you've lost touch with who you really are, that you've been living on autopilot, playing a role rather than standing in your truth. The work is not easy, it's uncomfortable, it's messy, but it's also liberating, because when you meet yourself fully, deeply, honestly, you stop abandoning yourself, you stop shrinking to fit in, you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable, and from that place you begin to love yourself more than anyone else ever could. Not because you're perfect, but because you've finally come home to who you really are. And that kind of self-love, it's unshakable, it's untouchable, and it changes everything. Validation is one of the most misunderstood needs in the human experience. From the time we're young, we're taught directly or indirectly that our worth is something that's handed to us. You get good grades, people clap, you look a certain way, they approve you achieve something, they validate you, and over time, without even realizing it, we build our self-worth on external markers: the praise, the applause, likes, the replies, the attention. We start to believe that if we're not seen, we're not worthy. If we're not complimented, we're not enough. If someone doesn't choose us, there's something wrong with us. But that's a broken system. And the longer you live by it, the more disconnected you become from your true power. The hard truth is the validation you're looking for from parents, partners, friends, coworkers, even strangers online is their responsibility to give. It's yours. It was always yours, because external validation is temporary. It's conditional. It's inconsistent. One day they love you, the next day they're gone. One moment you're enough, the next moment you're questioned. And if your sense of self depends on that roller coaster, your identity will always be in crisis. Constantly shift who you are just to be liked. You'll say yes when you mean no. You'll silence your truth to maintain peace that isn't even real. And worst of all, you'll forget who you are without the applause. This isn't about becoming cold or closed off. It's about remembering that your worth isn't a project. It's not up for debate. You don't need someone else to stamp your value into existence. You are valuable because you exist. That's it. And once you understand that, once you stop handing people the remote control to your confidence, you start living with a freedom that can't be faked. You stop performing, you stop proving, you just become authentically, unapologetically, powerfully. Now, this kind of internal validation doesn't just show up one day. Have to practice it. It's a habit. It's waking up and reminding yourself that who you are is enough. Even if no one notices today, it's doing the hard thing and being proud of yourself before anyone else even knows what you did. It's looking in the mirror and choosing compassion over criticism. Even in days when your reflection feels unfamiliar, and most importantly, it's being honest with yourself. Are you chasing their attention because you don't yet believe you're worthy without it? Are you waiting for someone else to tell you that you matter because deep down you're afraid to tell it to yourself? That kind of honesty is uncomfortable. But it's where your power lives, because once you see the pattern, you can break it. Once you realize that the praise you seek from others is just a mirror for the love you haven't fully given yourself. You take responsibility, you stop outsourcing your self-esteem, you stop waiting, instead you go inward. You build, you heal, you affirm yourself, not with fake positivity, but with real truth, with actions, with boundaries, with consistency. The moment you stop needing validation from others is the moment you become untouchable, not in an arrogant way, but in a grounded, peaceful way, because you'll know that even if they don't see your light, it's still there. Even if they don't clap, you'll still be proud. Even if they leave, you won't collapse. That's self-love and action. That's the quiet confidence that changes lives. And here's the irony. When you stop chasing validation, people start giving it to you anyway. They notice your energy. They respect your presence. They admire your strength. But by then, you're not dependent on it anymore. It's a bonus, not a need. And that shift, that transformation from needing approval to being your own source of worth is what sets you free. So if you're feeling invisible or questioning your worth or waiting for someone to tell you you're enough, stop right now. Look at everything you've overcome. Look at how far you've come. Look at how you still keep showing up, even when no one's watching. That's who you are. That's what matters. And no one else gets to define that for you. You don't need their permission. You don't need their applause. You just need to finally believe what's been true. All along, you're enough. Exactly as you are. When you truly begin to love yourself, something incredible happens. You start to build boundaries, protect your energy, not barriers that push people away. There's a huge difference. Boundaries are not about isolating yourself from the world. They're about making a conscious decision to protect your peace, your time, your emotional stability, and your self-worth. Most people are afraid to set boundaries because they're afraid of losing people. But here's the truth. If someone leaves because you respected yourself, they were never meant to stay. Loving yourself means understanding that you don't need to tolerate disrespect in any form, even if it comes from someone you care about. So many people confuse boundaries with being mean or distant, but boundaries are actually the highest form of self-respect. When you establish them, you're not rejecting others, you're honoring yourself. You're saying, I value my mental and emotional health, and I won't compromise it just to be liked. That is not selfish. That is survival. That is how you stop burning out. That is how you stop resenting people. That is how you stop being drained by situations that once left you emotionally bankrupt. The reason so many people struggle to love themselves is because they have no idea how to protect themselves. They let anyone and everyone have access to their energy, their time, emotions. But when you start putting yourself first, you realize that not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your thoughts, to influence your decisions, or to weigh in on your dreams. When you love yourself, become more intentional about who gets access to you, and that's not cold. That's clarity. You start to see that saying no isn't a rejection, it's a redirection. It's you refusing to betray yourself. Because every time you say yes to someone else at the expense of your own peace, you're saying no to yourself. And you can't keep doing that. If you want to grow, you can't keep sacrificing your needs to keep the peace. Especially when the cost is your self-respect. Boundaries also help you attract better people. When you love yourself enough to create standards, you filter out those who come with manipulation, guilt, or drama. You send a clear message. This is who I am. This is what I allow. And this is what I will not tolerate. People who genuinely care about you will respect that. They won't push back. They won't try to guilt you or make you feel bad. They'll step up or they'll step out. And either way you win. You don't need to be surrounded by people who benefit from your lack of boundaries. You need to be surrounded by people who respect your growth, who honor your voice, and who add peace to your life. Not take it. What's even more powerful is how boundaries affect your relationship with yourself. When you keep promises to yourself, when you protect your time, when you speak up, when something doesn't feel right, start to trust yourself more. And that's where confidence is born. That's how you stop second guessing everything, because you've got your own back now. You're no longer outsourcing your worth or begging for approval. You are standing firmly in who you are. And that is the root of real self-love. There's a quiet strength that comes from loving yourself enough to set boundaries. You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly. You don't need to justify your peace. You simply make a decision. I matter, my voice matters, my peace matters, and then you live by that. Not everyone will like it. That's okay. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be authentic. You're here to live a life that honors who you are, not who the world wants you to be. So the next time you feel guilty for saying no, or for walking away, or for protecting your energy, remind yourself of this. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to disappoint others in the process of not disappointing yourself. That's not cruelty, that's growth. That's alignment. That's what happens when you stop people pleasing and start soul pleasing. You owe it to yourself to stop accepting less than you deserve. You owe it to yourself to stop being available to people who only show up when it benefits them. You owe it to yourself to live a life where your boundaries aren't seen as obstacles but as declarations of your worth. And the moment you truly believe that everything changes, because once you begin to protect your peace like it's sacred, the universe begins to match that energy. The wrong people disappear, the right ones stay. And most importantly, you finally feel safe inside yourself. That is the true reward of loving yourself enough to set boundaries. That negative voice inside your head isn't truth. It's a loop, a program, something built from your past experiences, childhood wounds, moments of rejection, failure, embarrassment, comparison, shame. You didn't choose it. It was downloaded piece by piece over time. And the problem is most people never realize they're operating their entire life with that voice running the show, that voice that says, you're not good enough, not attractive enough, not smart enough, not worthy. And because you've heard it for so long, you've started believing it. You treat it like it's the authority. But here's the truth: that voice is not you. It's the noise, and learning to separate from it is one of the most powerful forms of self-love you'll ever practice. The inner critic is sneaky. It doesn't scream at you all the time. Sometimes it's subtle. It whispers, you always mess this up, when you're about to try something new. It says they probably don't care when you want to share your ideas. It mocks your dreams. It doubts your strength. It reminds you of your failures and makes you think you're defined by them. And because it sounds like your voice, you trust it. But let's be clear, it's not your wisdom. Wisdom uplifts, it guides, it encourages. The inner critic, on the other hand, tears down. It judges, it belittles, it shames. So why would you trust a voice whose only mission is to hold you back? The first step to silencing this inner enemy is awareness. You've got to catch it in the act. That means paying attention when you hear that harsh thought pop up. Pause, question it. Would you ever say that to a friend? Would you ever tell someone you love, you're pathetic, you're worthless, no one will ever love you, you're a failure? No, you wouldn't, because those are truths, they're attacks. So why is it okay to say them to yourself? You have to start replacing that voice with one that's kinder, not delusional, not fake, but compassionate, supportive, grounded in truth. When you mess up, instead of saying you're such a failure, say you made a mistake, but this is how you grow when you feel insecure. Instead of saying you're not enough, say you're still growing, and that's okay. Speak to yourself like someone you care about, because how you speak to yourself becomes how you see yourself, and how you see yourself becomes how you show up in the world. Rewiring that voice takes time. It's not instant. You've got to be intentional. You've got to challenge the lies every time that voice says you can't. You respond with, I'm going to try anyway. Every time it says you're too late, you say there's still time for me. Every time it says you're not as good as them, you say, I'm not here to compete. I'm here to grow. You meet the critic with truth over and over until one day its voice doesn't sound so loud. And eventually it stops running your life. But here's something important. Don't wait until the voice is gone to start loving yourself. Start now. Love yourself with the doubts, yourself through the process. Because healing isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. Honest enough to admit, yes, I have this voice, and yes, it's been hurting me, but I don't have to believe it anymore. That's what real self-love looks like, not the absence of struggle, but the choice to keep going in spite of it. There will be days when the critic shows up stronger than usual. Maybe after a rejection, a failure, a breakup, a moment of vulnerability. That's when you've got to lean in even harder. That's when you remind yourself, I'm not defined by this moment. I'm not defined by this voice. I am more than my fears. I am more than my past. I am more than my worst thoughts. You keep choosing that again and again. The truth is, loving yourself is a rebellion against everything that voice has told you for years. It's breaking free from a story that you're not enough. And here's the beautiful part. Once you do that, once you start loving yourself for real, you stop needing others to convince you of your worth. You don't beg, you don't chase, you don't perform. You walk through life with a quiet kind of confidence, a strength that says, know who I am, even if the world doesn't. That's why you have to challenge that inner critic, because it's not just about feeling better, it's about living freer. It's about being able to pursue the things you love without fear. Speak your truth without shame. Take up space without apology. And that only happens when you stop letting the lies inside your head go unchecked. So today decide that You're done letting that voice control you, decide to become the loudest advocate for your own growth. And when that inner critic tries to pull you back into the old story, you simply say, not today, I choose love. I choose truth. I choose me. And you keep moving forward because you're worth that much. Always have been, always will be. If you want to know how people should treat you, look no further than how you treat yourself. That's the mirror. That's the message. The reality is you are always teaching others how to engage with you through your choices, your tone, your limits, and even your silence. It all sends a signal. If you're constantly putting yourself last, downplaying your needs, saying yes when you mean no, then people begin to think that's who you are. Someone who doesn't require much, someone who doesn't expect respect, someone who tolerates anything just to avoid conflict. But the minute you start honoring yourself, everything shifts, and it's not about changing them, it's about changing you. The way you treat yourself becomes a blueprint. People learn how to approach you based on the standards you enforce. If you speak to yourself with criticism and self-doubt, others pick up on that energy. Even if unconsciously they mirror it, that sarcastic remark, you brush off the flakiness, you keep accepting the inconsistency you allow. That's not them. Crossing a line, that's you refusing to draw it, and as hard as it is to admit self-neglect, can look a lot like kindness to those who benefit from it. So they take and they take and they take because you're always offering not out of abundance, but out of fear, that if you stop giving, they'll leave. But here's the twist. They already left the moment they saw you wouldn't protect yourself. Loving yourself changes this dynamic. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing closure. You stop shrinking to fit into places that were never meant to hold your fullness. You realize that you don't need anyone to validate you when you've already decided that you are enough. When you stop abandoning yourself. You stop attracting those who thrive on your abandonment. Think about this. When you respect yourself, it's visible, it's not loud, but it's solid. You become someone who doesn't need to yell to bird, someone who doesn't need to beg to be chosen. Your presence carries weight because your boundaries are real people. Either step up or they step out, and either one is a gift. This is where the real work begins. Start observing the small ways you undermine your own value. It's okay when it's not, the no worries when your feelings are deeply hurt. The invitations you accept when you're tired, the help you offer when you're drowning, the apologies you give just to keep the peace. These are not acts of love, they're acts of fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone. But here's the truth, being disliked is survivable. Being misunderstood is temporary. But being disconnected from yourself, that's the wound that doesn't heal until you decide to show up for yourself. So what does it actually look like to treat yourself well? Boundaries. Yes, but it's also inner dialogue. It's how you speak to yourself when you mess up. It's whether or not you keep the fear. Whether your actions match your values, you can't fool yourself. You know when you're out of alignment, you know when you're playing small and deep down. That's what hurts the most. Not what they did, but what you allowed while calling it love, patience, or loyalty. It's time to redefine love. Love is a self-sacrifice. It isn't bending until you break. It's not convincing someone of your worth. Love is truth. Love is standards. Love is walking away from anything that costs your peace. Love is showing up for yourself, even when no one else does. Love is refusing to shrink. It's waking awake and saying, I deserve more, and I'm not afraid to lose people in the process of becoming who I was meant to be. If you want better relationships, start with the one you have with yourself. Teach others how to respect you by refusing to tolerate disrespect. Show them how to care by caring for yourself. Be the example of the love you expect. Understand you don't have to fight to be valued. The right people won't need convincing. They'll already see it because you'll be living it. You'll be speaking it. You'll be radiating it in the way you walk, talk, and move through the world, not arrogantly, authentically. So stop waiting for someone to show you how to be loved. Be the example, be the blueprint, love yourself so boldly, so consistently, so unapologetically that no one ever questions how you should be treated again. And if they do, that's your cue, that's your signal, that's your moment to choose yourself. Over again, when you finally learn to love yourself more than anyone else, something inside you clicks. You stop walking into rooms wondering if people like you, and you start wondering if you like them. You stop chasing after love like it's a prize to be won, and you start becoming the source of the love you've always been looking for. Because here's the truth. The world can't give you what you won't give yourself, that void you keep feeling. It's not because you're not lovable. It's because you've handed the responsibility for loving you to everyone but you. Think about it. How many times have you waited for someone to text back to feel worthy, How many times have you doubted your worth? Just because someone else didn't see it, you're not broken. You've just been trained to seek validation outside of yourself, and that's where the damage begins. Because when your sense of self depends on how someone else feels about you, you're living on unstable ground. Their silence becomes your anxiety. Their approval becomes your oxygen. That's not love, that's self-abandonment. Real self-love is radical. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to face the parts of you you've buried for years. It makes you look in the mirror and say, I've been enough this whole time. I just didn't believe it. It's waking up and deciding that even on your worst days, you're still worthy of compassion, that you don't have to earn love by being useful. Pretty agreeable. Perfect. You are not a project. You are a person, and you're allowed to take up space. Exactly as you are loving yourself means you stop apologizing for your standards. You stop explaining why you need time alone, why you walked away from that relationship, why you said no instead of yes when you love yourself. You stop negotiating with people who don't even know your worth. You stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You start walking differently, speaking differently. You no longer need to convince people to stay because you realize your peace is more valuable than their presence. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You begin to understand that not everyone is supposed to be in your life forever. And that's okay. The people who don't respect your boundaries will label your self-love as selfishness. Let them. That's not your concern. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable with your growth. Your job is to stay true to the person you're becoming, even if it means walking alone for a while, because loving yourself means becoming your own home. It means you're no longer desperate to be accepted into rooms where you don't even feel safe. You don't need to be chosen by anyone to feel complete. You are already whole at love. You've been chasing in others. It's been waiting for you to return to yourself, to stop begging, to stop proving, to stop performing. The love you've always needed is your own. And once you fully embrace that, you become magnetic. You stop attracting people who only want you when it's convenient. You start drawing in people who respect your boundaries, who honor your truth, who reflect your worth back to you, not because you needed them to, but because you already believed it yourself. And let's be honest, this kind of love isn't always loud. It's not a highlight reel. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it looks like crying in your car because you finally said no. Sometimes it's deleting the number you memorized. Sometimes it's sitting with the discomfort of being alone rather than staying in a relationship that makes you feel invisible. But every one of those moments is you coming home to yourself. You are not too much, are not too broken. You are not too late. You are exactly who you need to be right now, and the work ahead is not about becoming someone different. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. You don't need fixing. You need acceptance. You don't need chasing. You need presence, and you don't need anyone else to love you before you start loving yourself. So today, do something brave. Choose you, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, powerful one. Speak kindly to yourself. Honor your boundaries. Show up for your goals. Sit in your solitude. Be proud of how far you've come. This is what loving yourself more than anyone else looks like. It's not selfish, it's sacred. And once you learn how to do it, your entire life begins transform, not because others change, but because you finally stop abandoning the one person who's been with you through everything.